Welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into today's deep dive, I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We are decoding the biggest financial transition of our lifetime, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Stick around until the end because I'm going to show you why what is happening right now is not just another market cycle. It is the final piece of a puzzle that has been decades in the making. If you have been following the cryptocurrency space for any length of time, you have probably heard the term price target thrown around. You have seen the charts, the memes, the hopium, and the despair. But when I mention a $10,000 price target for XRP, most people immediately categorize that as pure speculation. They lump it in with the wild predictions you see on social media from anonymous accounts with no credibility. But here is the reality check that most of the retail world is missing. The people who are actually designing the replacement for the current financial system do not call it speculation. They call it a mathematical requirement. They call it the inevitable outcome of a system that is being engineered from the ground up to handle the movement of the world's wealth. The greatest illusion that has been sold to the public over the last decade is that XRP is just another cryptocurrency. It is treated as just another line item on a list of thousands of digital assets competing for attention and trading volume. This is not just inaccurate, it is a deliberate misdirection. XRP is not a competitor to Bitcoin or Ethereum in the way that most people think. It is not trying to be digital gold or a smart contract platform for decentralized applications. XRP is the plumbing. It is the underlying infrastructure that has been quietly built to support a global economy that is currently drowning in its own debt, suffocating under massive deficits, and facing the very real threat of systemic insolvency. We are living in a time where the traditional financial system is no longer just showing cracks, it is actively crumbling. The banking system is riddled with hidden exposures. The derivatives market is a ticking time bomb with hundreds of trillions of dollars in unbacked obligations. Central banks are printing money at rates that would have been unthinkable a generation ago, devaluing the purchasing power of the very currencies they are supposed to protect. This crumbling infrastructure adds friction, risk, and delay to every single transaction that moves through it. Every cross-border payment, every settlement between central banks, every commodity trade is slowed down and made more expensive by a system that was built in a pre-digital age. XRP was not an accident. It was not a random project started by developers who wanted to create another coin. It was specifically designed to solve this multi-trillion-dollar problem by providing infinite scalability and instant final settlement. Now, I want you to really absorb this next point because it changes everything about how you view value in this space. Institutions over retail. It is absolutely crucial to understand that XRP was never designed for the retail investor. I know that sounds counterintuitive because you are sitting there holding it, watching the price charts, hoping for a breakout. But the architecture of this asset was built for the institutions that manage and control the global flow of capital. This is the distinction that separates those who understand what is happening from those who are just waiting for a pump. When we talk about price discovery for an asset like this, we are not talking about retail FOMO driving the price up to a new all-time high. We are talking about a value that must scale to meet the demand of the entire tokenized global economy. The price cannot stay low because the liquidity requirements of moving trillions of dollars demand a certain market depth. If the price is too low, there simply aren't enough tokens to facilitate the volume without massive slippage. Let's talk about the revelation that most of the media completely ignored. Recently, Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, confirmed that $13 trillion are already moving through Ripple Treasury on an annual basis. Read that again, $13 trillion. That number is so large that it is difficult for the human mind to even conceptualize. To put it in perspective, that is larger than the entire GDP of every country on Earth, except for the United States and China. That capital is currently being moved using traditional systems, without utilizing blockchain technology, and without utilizing XRP. But here is the alpha that changes the entire game. Ripple has already built the liquidity corridors. They have spent years establishing the partnerships, the infrastructure, the legal frameworks, and the technical integrations necessary to move value across borders. They are not starting from scratch. They are simply waiting for the final regulatory green light to flip the switch and move those trillions onto the XRP ledger. When that switch is flipped, the demand for XRP will not be a gradual increase. It will be an immediate and overwhelming requirement. In a world of surging geopolitical tensions, sovereign nations and central banks are desperately seeking a neutral bridge asset. They need an asset that can facilitate trade and settlement without being controlled by any single nation. The current system relies heavily on the US dollar, which means it relies heavily on US foreign policy, US sanctions, and US political whims. Countries that are not aligned with the United States are looking for an alternative. They need an asset that cannot be weaponized, cannot be frozen on a whim, and cannot be influenced by any particular political group. XRP is perfectly positioned to become that neutral global reserve bridge currency. It is not controlled by any government. It is not issued by any central bank. It is simply a protocol, a piece of technology that facilitates the movement of value. This neutrality is its greatest strength. Now we have to talk about the mechanics of value, scarcity, and the burn mechanism. XRP has a finite supply of 100 billion tokens. That number was set at inception and cannot be changed. There is no mining, no inflation, no new issuance. But the real kicker is the transaction burn. Every single transaction on the XRP ledger destroys a tiny amount of XRP. It is a micro burn, but when you scale that to trillions of dollars in volume, the cumulative effect is massive. As institutional adoption scales and trillions flow through the ledger, the supply available for liquidity purposes will shrink. Basic economics tells you that when demand increases and supply decreases, price must rise. But this is not just about supply and demand in the traditional sense. It is about utility. The price must climb significantly just to provide the liquidity necessary to handle the volume. If you are trying to settle a $10 billion transaction, you need enough XRP available at a certain price point to facilitate that trade without moving the market against yourself. The higher the volume, the higher the price needs to be to provide adequate depth. The retail crowd is sitting there waiting for a pump based on news headlines. They want to see a tweet from Elon Musk or a listing on a new exchange. They want to see green candles and breakout patterns. Meanwhile, the architects of the new system are building a framework where utility forces the price to levels that ensure global liquidity. Are you holding for a price target, or are you holding the backbone of the tokenized global economy? This is the question you have to ask yourself. The new financial system is not going to be a single-chain monopoly. That is a misconception that a lot of people have. They think that one blockchain will win and all the others will become irrelevant. The reality is far more sophisticated. The architecture of the global reset relies on a two-tier banking system where two distinct assets play complementary, non-competing roles. While the retail crowd is busy arguing online about which coin is better, the institutions have already finalized the division of labor. XRP is the heavy-duty engine. It is built for financial enterprises, for wholesale settlement, for moving trillions between central banks and global clearinghouses. It is the backbone of the interbank system. On the other side, you have Stellar, XLM, which is the retail-facing layer. It is designed for peer-to-peer transactions, for remittances, for financial inclusion in emerging markets. Together, they create a unified framework that can tokenize everything from commercial bank deposits to central bank digital currencies. It is a symmetrically engineered duopoly designed to capture every drop of global value. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the SEC lawsuit. Most people view the SEC lawsuit against Ripple as a simple regulatory dispute. They think it was about whether XRP is a security or not. But if you dig deeper, you realize that the lawsuit was never about investor protection. It was a calculated slowdown. It was a classic problem-reaction solution model used to suppress public awareness while the elite positioned themselves. During the discovery process of that lawsuit, information came to light that most of the media refused to cover. Ripple currently holds over 1,700 non-disclosure agreements with sovereign governments and global financial titans. Let that sink in. 1,700 NDAs. These are not small players. These are central banks, treasury departments, and the largest financial institutions on the planet. These agreements represent invisible adoption. They represent the fact that the infrastructure is already being integrated, but under a shroud of secrecy. The court discovery process only revealed the tip of the iceberg, and what it showed was that the adoption is far ahead of what anyone in the public realizes. Under Basel III regulations, central banks are moving back toward gold, but this is not your grandfather's gold standard. The 2026 transition is moving toward tokenized digital gold. Physical gold is difficult to move, expensive to store, and impossible to settle instantly across borders. Tokenized gold solves all of those problems, and Ripple is the only infrastructure currently capable of tokenizing physical assets like gold, bonds, and even sovereign debt, allowing near-instant settlement on the XRP ledger. As we speak, there are discussions at the highest levels of the U.S. Treasury about tokenizing bonds directly through the XRP ledger. If the largest debt market in human history starts running on the XRPL, the demand for XRP as a reserve currency will be absolutely unprecedented. We are witnessing the rise of what is being called the quantum financial system, or QFS. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is the convergence of three technological pillars: quantum computing for raw processing power, artificial intelligence for automated surveillance and risk management, and blockchain for absolute transparency and scalability. XRP is the master key that ensures this entire global network functions as a single, interoperable entity. Without XRP, these systems would remain siloed. With XRP, they become a unified global ledger capable of settling any asset anywhere, instantly. The 1,700 NDAs are not just contracts. They are the blueprints for the reset. They represent the agreements that have been signed in back rooms and boardrooms away from the public eye. They are the reason the SEC had to slow things down. They are the reason the price has been suppressed. The establishment needed time to get its house in order before the switch was flipped. Are you distracted by the SEC drama? Are you watching the news cycle waiting for the next headline? Or are you watching the $13 trillion institutional pipeline finally being connected to the new digital gold standard? This is not fake news. It is a realignment of the global monetary system happening in real time. The question is no longer if XRP will reach institutional scale. That question has already been answered by the NDAs, by the treasury flows, by the partnerships, and by the technology. The question now is how the world functions when the price discovery finally reflects its intended utility. The final phase of this transformation is driven by a simple, cold mathematical reality that I call the liquidity paradox. For an asset to move the world's wealth, the price cannot stay low. It must scale to provide the necessary depth for multi-trillion-dollar settlements. If you try to move $1 trillion through an asset with a market cap of $100 billion, you will blow right through the order books. The price has to be high enough that the available supply can absorb the volume without catastrophic slippage. The scarcity engine is already running. XRP has a finite supply of 100 billion tokens. Every single transaction burns a fraction of that supply. As the institutional volume grows, especially with that $13 trillion annual treasury flow moving onto the ledger, the scarcity doesn't just increase linearly, it accelerates. The value of every remaining drop of XRP in existence must rise to compensate for the reduced supply and increased demand. This is not speculation. This is arithmetic. Tokenizing the world's debt is the ultimate catalyst. When you look at the global economy, the biggest market by far is the debt market. Bonds, treasuries, sovereign debt, corporate debt. It is measured in quadrillions of dollars. If even a fraction of that market moves onto the XRP ledger, the demand for XRP as the settlement asset becomes insatiable. The U.S. Treasury moving to tokenize bonds is the canary in the coal mine. Once that happens, every other sovereign nation will follow. They have to, because if they don't, they will be left out of the new global liquidity pool. The intentional delay that we have witnessed over the last few years was by design. Historically, major shifts occur through a problem-reaction-solution model. A crisis is manufactured or exacerbated, the public demands a solution, and the new system is rolled out as the only viable answer. The legal delays, the regulatory uncertainty, the suppression of the price, it was all intentional. It was designed to keep retail priced out until the new guard was fully positioned to flip the switch. If you could have bought XRP at 0.30 with full knowledge of what was coming, everyone would have done it. But if the price is suppressed until the infrastructure is ready, and then it explodes to levels that most cannot afford, the institutions win. They get the liquidity they need, and retail is left holding fiat. The infrastructure isn't just ready, it is already in motion. The ledger is live, the partnerships are signed, the NDAs are in place, the treasury flows are waiting. The only missing piece was regulatory clarity, and that is finally arriving. The Clarity Act of April 2026 is being positioned as the final green light. It is the stamp of approval that allows the institutional floodgates to open. When that happens, the transformation will happen faster than you think. It will not be a slow grind upward, it will be a repricing to meet the demands of the global economy. Are you waiting for a price pump based on retail speculation, or are you watching the arithmetic of the global reset reach its final conclusion? The era of pure speculation has officially ended. We are entering the era of utility-based valuation, from the $13 trillion already moving through Ripple Treasury to the 1,700 institutional NDAs shielding the truth, to the tokenization of global debt on the XRPL. The path to valuations that most find unimaginable is not a dream. It is the reality of the design. You are not just holding a digital asset, you are holding the master key to the new financial system. The plumbing of the global economy is being rebuilt, and XRP is the pipe through which all value will flow. Stay patient, position yourself wisely, and above all, stay safe. I am the Calm Analyst, and I will see you in the next video.